Karen was the sort of woman who'd clutch her pearls over a mailbox, painted the wrong shade of beige if it wasn't HOA sanctioned. The moment she was elected president, she strutted through the neighborhood like she'd been anointed ruler of the cul-de-sac, her clipboard glued to her hand like a scepter of suburban tyranny. My ranch, perched quietly on the outskirts of this polished cookie-cutter community, was home to my cattle, chickens, and the odd donkey, all minding their own business. But to Karen, my slice of rural life was a smudge on her vision of pristine perfection. Welcome to HOA Buzz. Hit that like and subscribe button for the juiciest HOA drama. Karen's first jab was about the odor from my livestock, as if nature itself was a personal affront. Then she called my old tractor an eyesore, which told me she wasn't just drunk on power, she was scheming. My ranch predated every manicured lawn in this place, but Karen acted like she'd invented the zip code. One morning, I caught her snapping photos of my barn from the sidewalk, like she was assembling evidence for a grand jury. Next, she called a meeting, the kind where people show up for free pastries and gossip. She unveiled a PowerPoint about upholding community standards, claiming my farm clashed with modern suburban values. Most folks just nodded, too spineless or bored to snicker. But I saw her smug grin when she dropped the word eviction, pausing for effect like she was starring in her own courtroom drama. She thought she was winning. I stayed quiet, letting her bask in her moment. Karen's crusade against me snowballed fast, like a runaway stroller down a hill. Within days, she'd papered the neighborhood with glossy flyers featuring a doctored image of my ranch looking like a scrap heap. End rural chaos, they shrieked, as if chaos was her word of the day. One even ended up taped to my gate. Pretty sure that's a felony, but I let it go. For now, she'd show up with her clipboard, scribbling furiously like I was running a covert operation. I'd tip my cap and smile, which drove her up the wall. One day, she dragged along two HOA lackeys, Greg and Susan, who looked like they'd rather be anywhere but near my pigs. She pointed at my animals like they were exhibit in a crime scene, muttered something, and flounced off in a haze of lavender perfume and self-righteousness. Then came the official letter from the city, cold and formal. Karen had filed a complaint alleging zoning issues, environmental hazards, and, my favorite, neighborhood discord. I laughed so hard I nearly tipped over my rocking chair. They gave me 45 days to respond. I circled the date in red, not out of fear, but because this was getting fun. Karen wasn't done. She announced an emergency HOA vote, the showdown to end all showdowns. If the majority sided against my ranch, they'd push the city to strip my property's residential status. Basically, banishment by bureaucracy. She even hired a taco truck to bribe voters. Clever, if it wasn't so transparent. But she missed the murmurs, the side glances, the way folks clammed up when she left. Some recalled the ice storm, when my generator kept their heat on. Others remembered the dry spell, when my well saved their lawns. Karen didn't notice because Karen didn't listen. She just barked orders. She thought she had this in the bag. She was wrong. The night of the vote felt like a low-rent reality show. Folding chairs, hushed arguments, and Karen dressed like she was auditioning for a TD talk. She sashayed onto the community center stage, mic in hand, smirking like she'd already framed my eviction notice. The crowd shuffled in, drawn by her flyers promising a ranch-free future. Karen kicked off with a theatrical sigh and a click of her remote. "Friends," she cooed, "we're here to save our neighborhood from disorder, from dirt, from donkeys." Someone coughed. A kid fidgeted. She rambled about property values and suburban harmony, painting my tractor as a public menace. I didn't even have a rooster, but you'd think I ran a circus. When public comments opened, Susan whined about her tulips, and Greg muttered about barnyard smells. Before slinking away, Karen glowed. This was her moment. Then Mrs. Henderson, a frail, 80-something widow who only left her house for bridge club, stood up. She fixed Karen with a stare and asked, "Is it true his ranch kept our water flowing when the city's pumps broke last July?" Karen stiffened like she'd been tasered. Heads turned, whispers grew. Another neighbor piped up, "Yeah, he let us haul water from his well during the outage." Someone else added, "My cousin at City Hall says his land ties into our emergency grid." Karen's smirk faltered, her clipboard trembling. I sat in the back, twirling a straw, watching her plan unravel like a dollar-store sweater. The vibe shifted. Karen smelled trouble. She looked like she'd just bitten into a lemon when I stood and slid a stack of documents across the table. Certified proof that my ranch's water lines, power backups, and infrastructure had saved this neighborhood's bacon during floods, blackouts, and city screw-ups. I wasn't aware of these agreements. Karen sputtered, gripping her clipboard like a life raft. "That's your issue, Karen," I said, taking the mic. "You don't know how this place actually runs, but you sure love playing queen." The HOA board squirmed. Greg skimmed the papers like they might bite. Susan looked ready to bolt. The neighbors, though, they were eating it up, some filming on their phones. Karen's grand takedown had become her own roast. I leaned in, voice calm. "Since Karen's smear campaign cost me time, money, and nearly your utilities, I've got terms. Not demands. Terms. Every household pays a small fee to maintain the water lines and emergency systems I've been bankrolling while Karen was busy writing manifestos. It won't hurt, but it'll remind you what keeps your sprinklers on. And Karen, you'll personally cover my legal fees for fighting your nonsense petition. You'll write a public apology. No sneaky group chat nonsense. And you'll resign from the HOA. For good." Karen shook her head, but I cut her off. "You tried to boot the guy who keeps your pipes from freezing. You lost. Be glad I'm not billing you for the last 3 years of utilities." Mrs. Henderson stood again, cane wobbling but voice firm. I moved to approve his terms and remove Karen from the board, effective immediately. Seconded. Someone shouted. The vote was swift. Passed. Karen didn't leave. She fled, nearly toppling a planter that, oddly, looked freshly watered. Her apology appeared in the community newsletter, buried between a lost cat ad and a reminder about recycling bins. I framed it next to my city commendation. The first checks arrived soon after, tiny but telling. Each one was proof Karen's reign had crumbled under her own ignorance. My ranch kept humming, my neighbors waved again, and peace settled back in -1 clipboard, wielding dictator who'd finally learned you don't mess with the guy who keeps your water on. The end. Like and subscribe for more HOA throwdowns. Did Karen get what she deserved? Drop your take below.